Hey there, everybody. Welcome to my channel, The Magical Solution. My name is Lailani. It is Sunday night, the 25th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And boy, oh boy, do I have some news for you. I am going to be going to India in October, starting October 1st. And I'll be gone for a whole month. And that means that tonight's show will be the last show until November. So, of course, I had to close off the show for our little sabbatical with an amazing guest. His name is Asiel Baez, Oñi Adde. He is the author of Expansion of the Igbodun and I apologize. I dropped this. Hold on one second. His other book. Okay. Sorry. And tonight we are going to be talking about not only the Orishas, which I'm sure you're all interested in about, but we're also going to be talking about some observations with regard to the expansion of the Orisha practices and traditions and how it's moving from Africa and from the Caribbean here to America, even in some parts of Asia and in Europe. And this conversation needs to be had because with this expansion, may come some expansion of rules or expansion of ideas or expansion of mythos that may rub people the wrong way. So we got to talk about it as a community. And I'm really excited to have Oñi Adde here tonight to help you guys figure all this stuff out. So let's bring him on. There you are.
Hello.
Hi. The screen was black
Hello.
for a minute there, and I was like, oh no.
Oh no, I was just sitting here waiting patiently.
Yes. So, welcome to my
Thank
channel.
you.
Welcome to my show. This is how we grow. I'm really excited to have you on tonight. Thank you so much for saying yes to my invite.
Thanks to you, I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
So, if I may read your bio before we get started. So, Asiel Baez, Oñi Adde. Hopefully, I said that right. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Así es.
Asiel. Oh, I love that.
Así
Is an Obba Oriate, which is high priest of the Santeria / Lukumi faith, that was ordained into the religion over 23 years ago and has Oshun crowned. He came from Cuba at an early age and grew up practicing Orisha as well as other Neo-Pagan religions. He considers himself a crowned witch as his practices commingle with each other. He is the author of 2 books, which are serious modern works on the practices of the Orisha tradition and living the lifestyle of an Orisha priest. And further works are yet to come with an emphasis on furthering the education with the magical communities. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on, your upcoming projects. But as of right now, the expansion of the Igbodun is the book that I would love to talk to you about tonight, because it really focuses on this idea of the expansion of Orisha traditions. And what I noticed here in your bio is that you consider yourself a crowned witch and you practice Orisha tradition as well as other neo-pagan traditions, and that's interesting to me, and I kind of want to pick your brain about that because I'm also noticing that as in the community itself there's a lot of interest in the from the Western European / neo-pagan community, a lot of interest in the ATRs and the Orisha traditions, and you being part of sort of like that movement. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what that looked like for you?
Definitely. Okay, so the term crowned witch is mine and exclusively mine, and I came up with it because what we say is once you come into Ocha, you get crowned or you become an ordained priest, and I have always considered myself a witch also, or just a practitioner of the occult and like the mystical practices of all different sorts, etc. You know, I remember as a kid, before I got crowned when I was a kid, I got crowned when I was 9. But before that, I was literally in Cuba, and I would draw circles on the ground, and I had a little doll that was my goddess statue that I would put flowers around her, and I would dance in my circle and come up with songs and things, and I would just like, you know, be a little gay boy dancing in a circle. And that was before I got crowned, you know, that was before I got crowned. And later on, I got crowned, and then I immediately left Cuba once my year of Yaworaje was done. The very next day, my year was done on February 26th, and February 27th, we left Cuba early in the morning. And then I went up, and then I started, you know, learning English and growing up in this country, et cetera, et cetera. And I became very influenced by and paganism and magic and all of those things. And I found myself surrounded by like people that were witches. And
hold on one second. Asiel, it's breaking up real bad. Are you able to adjust a little bit?
I mean, I can hear you fine. I'm not sure what could be breaking, but I can hear you fine.
Okay, now you sound good. Continue. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yes. Okay, so I found myself surrounded by a lot of witches or people who liked Neo-Pagan magic and Wicca and things like that. And I was the only person around my circle that was also like into Santeria or into like ATRs or something else that wasn't precisely just Neo-Pagan and whatnot. So I noticed as I grew up older in my early 20s is when I started questioning myself a little bit. And I was like, I wonder why in my lifetime I had to go through that experience of being the only one and be influenced by other things that obviously I was very attracted to. But for example, my family also found to be weird, you know, because my family saw that I had an altar with a black cloth and candles and things and whatnot and pentagrams. And they were like, oh my God, what's happening? Is he a devil worshiper or something? And I always say a funny story because I definitely had a family / teacher, like from school teacher / good friend of the family. They had an intervention for me one time because they were like,
oh my God.
Yes, I had a spiritual intervention, and they were like, Orisha is the right way, and Orisha is the only way, and everything else is evil. And I was just like, girl, you all need to relax. You know? It was so funny. Usually people have other interventions, but I had a religious intervention, you know. This is when I was a teenager.
Oh my goodness.
But I noticed that I became that, you know, because I am interested in both of those worlds, and I have always considered myself a mystic, I also bring my mysticality into Orisha and whatnot. And I have noticed that in my Orisha community, there's lack in certain aspects, or what I consider to be certain spiritual lacks that have happened because of years of oppression in Cuba, and because of years of just lack of information and lack of integration or mixing with people and stuff. That's what we have here in the States, is the fact that everyone is so mixed and everybody wants to be the Wiccan, the witch, the Santero, the Voodoo-san, the Santa Muerte practitioner.
Oh my God, say it.
The Orisha practitioner, the Kimbanda, the Palero. Everybody wants to be everything. The Buddhist, the Hindu, the yogi. We all want to be everything. And so that's what I noticed that is happening. That although Orisha was in Africa, and then it got ripped and taken out into the Caribbean and got brought over to the Americas, it got nourished and cherished in Cuba. And then in Cuba, it definitely grew. And then now it is expanding into the United States. So what I always tell people is, like, think about Cuba, the size of Cuba, which is a small island. And just about not everybody in Cuba practices Santeria, but the grand majority of people do practice Santeria, or they're aware of it, or they they have a family member who practices, etc. Like everybody, at some point you get cleansed with an herb, or you get cleansed with an egg, or you can cleanse with a piece of bread.
Yeah, because like
Everything.
you said in your book, it's a lifestyle. It's not just, you know what I mean? It's not a
Very,
separate thing that you do.
it's very integrated into the
Yeah.
Hispanic culture. Hispanics have always definitely nurtured everything, all the wisdom that came from Africa. They cultured it. And, in Cuba culture, for example, that is it's just very loved and very cherished, and everybody likes it. And it has also even become kind of like a rite of passage for many Cubans to do the saint, what we say, hacer el santo. Even getting crowned, people like that is a big milestone, a big step for us. So imagine that here in the States too. Okay, so it's going to grow to the point that it'll be so big because so many people are interested in it, and many more people are becoming more interested, especially people from a magical background, that they want to find a community, because we are a very large community, which is also a very small community because we're very tight. But many people are coming in from a magical influence and then coming into Orisha with seeking more, or seeking more of a community, or more, I don't know, a tradition or something. But there's definitely interest of power, because people think that they'll find a little bit more power, which I don't agree with that. But I do agree that they will find a lot more tradition and longevity. That is what a lot of magical practitioners do seek.
Exactly. It's interesting that you say that. So, my observation, at least what I'm noticing, because I'm very involved in the pagan community as well. And what I'm seeing is you have interest and people who will seek out elders and go about the proper protocol to getting initiated and going through the process. But then you have sort of other groups that feel that the Orisha tradition is more archetypal, and therefore can be accessed by anyone at any time, and that the spirits themselves can be worked directly with versus going through any processes. So, as you see this expansion happening, in your opinion, how do we ensure that the tradition stays, within the context of its original constituents and culture, but yet still be adaptable and expansive enough to include these individuals who may have an issue with authority, who are, escaping Christianity, and so they don't want to follow rules and stuff like that? Like, how do you safeguard that without like being a gatekeeper, quote unquote?
Okay, so, well, another name for the religion that people need to understand is la regla de ocha, or the rule of ocha. Okay, so what happens is that we do have a hierarchy within the religion, and we do have protocols that people have to follow for you to be considered legitimate within the tradition and within the community itself. Okay, a magical practitioner, a third degree Wiccan, or third degree witch, or whatever tradition magical person that is into Neo-Pagan practices, that likes Oshun, I find that to be perfectly fine and perfectly okay for them to be attracted to Oshun. But what they need to understand, what people need to understand, is that what you read in a book and what you see in most videos are very shallow representations of the Orisha. Like, Oshun is beyond. Her favorite color is yellow. Her number is 5, and her favorite flower is a sunflower. I get it, but Oshun is way more than that, and she's way more than just the archetype of love. And you understand those things and begin to really experience those things when you follow the tradition that has been alive and has been kept alive for so many years by tapping into that tradition, which is what I always tell people. You cannot say that you like someone okay, and then not want to know their name, their last name, their favorite food, their favorite color, their favorite song, their favorite dish, etc., etc. If you like someone or you like a deity, it means you have to submerge yourself into the culture of that deity. Now, the difference between Orisha and some other deities is that Orisha is not a reconstructive religion. For example, as the Kemetics or the Egyptian people, you may have a worship of an Egyptian god that you may modify in whatever manner because that has already been lost, and it's people are trying to reconstruct that. But we have the worship of Oshun. We have all of her songs. We have her sacrifices. We have her foods, her adimus. We have her rituals. We have all of her things. So what people need to realize is the line between spirituality and hypocrisy. Okay, you can have a little altar to Oshun that you can have for 5 or 10 years, in which you have a statue of Oshun and you light her a candle and all that stuff, but that does not make you a priestess or a priest of Oshun, nor does that make you a child of Oshun. Because when you come into Ocha, Yemaya or Batala may end up being you like Baturi, or you're ruling Orisha, and Oshun may not even be your mother or your secondary or whatever, but it is okay for a magical practitioner to call on the Orisha and to pray to the Orisha, because the Orishas are energy, so they're beyond my tradition too. They're beyond my vessels. They're everywhere. So you can go to the river and give an offering to Oshun, and that is perfectly fine. But there's the other part too, that we say innocence is blessed, okay? And it's fine when you're innocent, but once you know that there's all these other traditions, all these other things, all these other prayers, all these other songs, all these other requirements, etc., you should try to, if you like it, to tap into those things as much as possible, rather than trying to make up something on your own. It's the same thing as cooking. You got to learn the traditional way of cooking Italian food or Thai food or whatever type of food, Indian food. You got to learn the tradition, the basic things, and then you can embellish your personal worship. So we have 50. What I try to teach people is that Orisha is 50% dogmatic and 50% spiritual. 50% dogmatic because we have protocols, and this is how you do a Lukumi ceremony. You do step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then at the end of the day, you can embellish each of those steps depending on the ceremony, the deity, the needs, or the monetary, the budget. You may have had budget for 3 bouquets of flower, and for another ceremony you may have for 7, and for another one you may have only for 1. So you embellish the ceremony depending on what's happening and the people and the needs and the actual. Because what we do have too is the fact that our ceremonies are a little complicated.
Right.
So they do require a good amount of materials and people and whatnot. So depending on the availability of all those things, you may have to even cancel a ceremony at a point because you don't have enough people or you don't have the materials, So as long as people understand that there is a protocol, it is okay for them to approach Orisha. But if they want to go deeper into Orisha and want to be considered a priest or a priestess of Orisha, then you have to follow the protocols of Orisha so that the community can recognize you. You're not even doing it anymore for yourself. You're doing it for the community, and that's the honest truth. Because at the end of the day, if all you have is your personal spiritual practice at your altar with your statue of Oshun, and you're casting a circle and you're doing your own thing, no one in the Orisha community is going to go and salute that altar as Oshun. I don't know if that makes sense to some people.
No, it totally does. Because you're right. This tradition, it's a communal tradition. It's a community tradition. So you don't really, the solitariness of it is in between all the communal stuff, which is a lot.
Exactly. The communal stuff, the communal stuff, the communal that solitary
Hello. Did I lose you?
Hello?
There you are.
I'm here the whole time.
Oh my gosh, you're breaking up so bad. Oh man. It's, you know what it is? When you start getting all the juicy stuff, that's when things go wrong. Can you hear me? Because you are breaking up. I can't hear anything.
Me. Hello.
Ooh, okay. I think he's going to try and come back on. Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much for the love-ins. Hello, Aoife, Rob, Steven, Tina, Saint. What's up, guys? Hello, Sonia and Tyrone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hopefully he comes back. I don't know what happened. Sorry, guys. Some technical difficulties. Okay. Let's see. There it is. There it is. There you are.
Am I here again? I've been here this whole time. I don't know what's happening.
Oh my gosh.
I'm even my phone here, like, what's going on? No, so I was
rewind about a minute.
Okay, so I was saying that well, I honestly forgot my train of thought, but at this point, but I was saying that as people are coming into the religion, the community that's why the religious rituals are done with witnesses, is so that when someone else threatens your authority, there's other people that will speak on your behalf, and they will say, I was there when they did this or when they received that, etc., etc.
Right.
So a person who's doing their own magical, spiritual, whatever they feel thing with the Orisha is entitled to do that, as long as they keep it solitary, but they are not part of the Orisha community, nor are they going to be respected as an elder in the community, nor is their opinion going to be appreciated within the community. So a lot of times the rites of elevation is for the community to accept you. And then once you have that acceptance and you go on and you do your own thing and your own worship, and you can do your own spells and your own, adimus or your own offerings, etc., etc. Does that make sense?
Totally. So, here's my next question. And we're going to get into this in regards to your book. How do you avoid it being a popularity contest at that point? Like, is it just that the titles themselves, that's like, once you've gotten the witnesses and you've gotten the titles, that should be enough for the respect? Or is there an element of winning the people over? Otherwise, wouldn't it be, like a popularity contest?
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why I asked that, or the reason why I kind of bring that up, is because in your book, you mention this idea of people sort of, especially those who are not of the tradition, sort of self-initiating, or this idea of claiming being a special person, that they have direct have you seen that, and what's your experience with that, and what do you say about that? Because if that's a possibility, then that whole recognition with the community, how does that cross over?
Mm-hmm. So I see that all the time, and I get that all the time from different people, because again, they're looking at Orisha with a witchy mentality versus a religious mentality. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Orisha is a religion. Santeria is a religion. It is a lifestyle. It is has a dogmatic side, etc. Whereas witchcraft is more like self-based, and you do whatever. And if your spell worked, then you go ahead with it and you keep doing it, or you do whatever you want with it. Orisha is like, you have to do step 1, step 2, step 3, say these words, do these things, do these gestures, and then you're done with the ceremony. That is the dogmatic side of Orisha. Once that part is done, then you can have, once you have the birthing ceremony, for example, once the Orisha has been birthed and the transfer of energy from the elder to the new godchild is done, then the godchild can use that Orisha that they have received and do whatever they want with it. And then you can light whatever candle, put whatever offering, do whatever you want with it. That's where your spirituality kicks in. Now, the problem is when people are trying to go on Instagram or Facebook or anywhere online and say, "Oh, I'm going to fix you an Oshun candle," or I'm gonna do a ritual with Yamaya for you," and then they're charging money for that. Okay, and then that is where myself and people of the religion have an issue, because then you cannot claim. That's like me saying, "Oh, well, I'm gonna, do your brain surgery because I read a book and I feel and I think that I'm a brain surgeon." It's exactly what happens, and it's not the case. So it's the same thing with Orisha. You need to learn again your ABCs before you get to the end of the alphabet. And some people want to do the alphabet from the back to the front, or from the middle to the sides, and that's not how it goes with Orisha, mainly because that's how we keep check, because that's what has happened many, many times. This is why we also have secrecy in the religion, because some people that are not initiated have learned too much, and then they have scammed other people that are completely innocent and have done things and given things and initiated and this and that and the other, and charged thousands and thousands of dollars. And then it's all botched, and it's all just a scam. So we have to be very careful with that. That's why we cherish also the tradition and the lineages, so that there is an authenticity to what we're doing and what we're giving and what we're saying.
Now, what about the authenticity with regards to the actual Orisha themselves? You have in your book, I mean, we're talking about the expansion of the Orishas, right? And in your book, you talk about the controversy around the birthing of Orishas, the birthing of some really unknown Orishas, and the birthing of Orishas that to some may be considered entirely made up. But either way, there's something happening. There's something happening in the atmosphere where these Orishas are wanting to be seen, they're wanting to be manifest, they're wanting to be present, especially here in America. And so, my question to you is the legitimacy with regards to Orisha. There was a quote in here where some people consider them pseudo Orishas, the ones that are not well known or possibly made up. What's that all about?
Okay, we have a very famous word that people use in a very derogative way. It's not the right word, derogatively, which is invention. They say, "Oh, that's an invention." And I'm like, "Girl, everything in life is an invention. The computer and the cell phone that you're using right now is an invention. Your telephone, everything in your house is an invention. There was a point in life and history that did not exist. Okay, there was a point that we did not have refrigerators, and now everybody uses a refrigerator in the house. Okay, so that's the same thing that happens with Orisha. I can only speak, and this is what I always tell people, that I can only speak from the time that I was born and the time that I was initiated later on forward. I cannot talk to anybody from 30 years ago or 50 or 60 or 100, because I technically, as Asiel Baez, Oñi Adde, was not around. So I don't know what they were doing or what was happening. So what happens is this: there has been because of all the internet and all the mixing and all the stuff, there has been the Santeria tradition, which is the most widely recognized tradition of Orisha by now. There's also the Candomblé tradition, which is in Brazil, and then there's the traditional people, which are the people that are still in Africa practicing traditionally, or in their own way too, how it was practiced and then how it got carried out. There's also the Shango in Trinidad and Tobago and whatnot. What has happened is that in all of those areas, there are different people with different levels of spirituality. So you as the person, if you go to sleep tonight and you have a dream that there's this beautiful woman that comes down to you and she says this and that, and she tells you I'm the goddess of this and I'm the goddess of that, and you need me for this and you need me for that. And then tomorrow you wake up, but you know, a person who is practicing Orisha has a dream like that, and then the next day they wake up and they decide, I'm going to bring this entity, this lady, to life. And then they gather all the things that will make it as an Orisha, which, you know, there's two things in particular, two elements, which are ritual elements that make up what we call the fundamento of the Orisha, or what the body of the Orisha is. So once you have those two things, you consecrate those two things in the name of this other spirit, and then you sacrifice upon it and you sing upon it, and life and energy in a shape. And then now you have brought that lady that you just saw the night before, and you now have her consecrated, and then people begin to worship her. And then someone else comes along and they're like, who is that? And then you say, oh, this is so and so, the lady of so and so. And then people are like, oh my God, I want to receive her too. And then that is how an entity begins to walk, and then they begin to run, and then they're fully manifested. Okay, those were like the three main steps. So you, as let's say that you decide to come up with your own god or goddess, that's technically the situation here. And that's what really has happened, that there have been orishas that have been for many years worshipped, that were reintroduced back into the Lukumi pantheon. For example, the case of Oshun. Oshun in Lukumi is as Oshun in Candomblé is as popular as Yemaya is in Lukumi. Okay, and they crown Oshun all the time and all that stuff. And we do not yet, but I really hope that I'm at least the first one who ever crowns an Oshun, because I want to be the pioneer. But that's what happened. So Oshun came back from Candomblé and got reintroduced back into the Lukumi community, which caused a stir. And I literally remember being on Facebook and people screaming about how this is an invention. And by now, 10, 15 years later, everybody has Oshun received. And everybody likes Oshun, and everybody wants to receive Oshun. It's the same thing with other entities. There have been some famous santeros in the past that have put together certain fundamentals or certain, you know, paraphernalia of Orisha together, and they have said, this is so and so, the child of so and so, and this Orisha has to do with this and that. And then they have composed that entity, that thought form, they have given it life, they cleansed it, they purified it, they consecrated it, they empowered it, they sacrificed upon it, they gave it worship, they gave all the things to bring that entity to life. And then they began to make it walk by giving it to other priests and priestesses, who then who did sacrifice, worship, all the good things on top of it. And then they too gave it to other people. And then that's how a cult of an Orisha grows. But everybody has to understand that everything starts with one. Okay, so you can start today the worship of Lady of the Stars, and then tomorrow you're going to have 1,000 people worshiping the Lady of the Stars. But it starts with one. Everything starts with one. So there's really no such thing as an invention. There's only innovation and refinement.
Interesting. And that's probably why there's such a disagreement in terms of how many Orisha actually there are. I mean, you see everything from your 4 pillars all the way up to 701 Orishas. And you know, it makes me it's cool, but it also makes me a little nervous, because it's like I can already see the new age Neo-Pagan community, you know, just like a random, you know, 27-year-old kid is like, I just birthed an Orisha, and like, you know, has like this whole thing. So again, that's a little nerve-wracking, but at the same time, when you actually look at the history, you know, of a lot of these Orishas, you're right. Before it was all mixed together, each Orisha was a separate, like it was their own nation. You had the Osun nation, you had the nation of the Shango, you had, and they all were associated with either a river or a mountain or a this or a that of that area. So it wasn't until, you know, the slaves of these different tribes like kind of got together and came to the New World, and that mixture really did happen. So now we're getting into America. And not only do you have that mixture, but they're also kind of going back to like Brazil, Peru, Mexico, where some of these lesser known Orishas, if you will, not lesser known, but like different Orishas were kind of dropped off on the way, and they're reclaiming them. So am I summarizing that somewhat accurately?
You're pretty okay and pretty accurate. So in Africa, what happened was that you had like cities, or there different locations were devoted to a particular Orisha. So you would have Chango and Oyo, for example, or Chung and Oshogbo, where everybody worships that one Orisha. When the Orisha got to Cuba, when the slaves got to Cuba and they had to reform the religion in Cuba, that's where the mixture came. And for example, in Africa, you will get crowned to one Orisha, and that was it. Whereas in Cuba, you went in with one Orisha, is what I mean. You got crowned to one Orisha, but you went in with one. And then in Cuba, you started going in with 4 or 5 or 6 or 7.
I've seen people with like 12. I've seen people with 12, 15 Orisha crown. I'm like, what?
That depends by the, not crowned, but they go
not crowned,
into
but
it.
yeah.
They go into it with all of those. Yes, that depends on the Orisha that you're crowning, that you're being crowned to, and that depends on the godparent, and that depends on the godchild's divination. Because you may have to go in with the Ibeis, whereas somebody else may not need to go in with the Ibeis, but here comes another person that's like, you know what, I want my godchild to go in with the Ibeis. So that may depend, on what happens. In Cuba, the religion got reformed and reshaped into what we practice now, and that is exactly what's happening here now, is that we're growing and reshaping in the States. And it will shift, unfortunately, because I'm a staunch believer of keeping the tradition, but I'd rather keep the tradition alive than to lose the entire tradition. You know, so even if it evolves, I'm still okay with the evolving, as long as there is still a transition of tradition and people are still respecting and growing in whatever manner. So even when it comes to birthing an Orisha or having a vision, because I don't want people to take that out of context in any way, you still need to learn the traditional way of consecrating in the correct way, etc., so just because someone had a revelation of an entity does not mean that that entity needs to be an Orisha, nor does it mean that they are an Orisha, nor does it mean that you have to consecrate it for the world. It could be something, everybody has their own spirit guides. So you may have had a vision with your spirit guide. That doesn't mean that you need to consecrate the spirit guide into like Orisha format to then give it birth to other people, because your spirit guide is just your spirit guide. For example, just really quickly, there's another entity in the Orisha, in the Lukumi pantheon, that's called Jembo. Jembo is an Ocha that is extremely, extremely, extremely loved in Lukumi. She's very well loved. And there are historical documentation of how that Ocha was birthed for the first time in Cuba, not even in Africa. It was birthed for the first time in Cuba. And then it was also because of a dream, in fact. And then it was only to be given to one person. It was just from a lady who did not even have her. She did not even have it, but it was the godmother consecrated it for the goddaughter, because the goddaughter was the one that was being harassed by this entity that was like, you need me in your life, you need me in your life. So the godmother consecrated something for the goddaughter, and then the goddaughter had it all her life. And when she was really old, before she passed, she gave it then to one of her godchildren, who then began to give it out. And then it just spread, so that Jembo was an Orisha. It was an entity that was personal of somebody, who then began to walk and then brand, and then was fully manifested everywhere. And now no one in the Lukumi tradition will question the authority of Jembo, but it wasn't an Orisha that technically came from Africa. It was definitely more an Ocha that was birthed in Cuba. And what has happened also is the fact that you have to really look at the truth of Cuba, that Cuba does have a lot of tourism and commercialization commercialist. I can't even say the word right now, but
Commercialism, yeah.
yes, a lot of commercialism, and that is in truth, because you will have people that will argue with me and all stuff, and I agree with them. That is in truth some of the things that have happened, that some unscrupulous people do put two and two together, and they're like, oh, here's this and here's that and here's that for $500 a piece. So you do have to be very careful with that. That's why we have the term, excuse me, pseudo Orisha, and that's why the best thing to always be at peace with everyone in the tradition and in the religion, the best way is to respect and be aware that if you believe in it and you like it and you want to have it and worship it, you can then receive it. But if you do not believe in it, you do not want it, you do not want to worship it, you just simply don't receive it. And that's it. But you don't have to criticize. Yeah, you don't have to criticize who has it and who doesn't have it. If you like it, you follow it. And if you don't, you just dismiss it, pretend it doesn't even exist. And that's the best way to go when it comes to Orishas.
Yeah, and the format that you have in your book, you divided up these Orisha into different courts. So you have the court of Obatala, the court of Oshun, the court of the, and I'm curious what your rationale for separating them out was, because now that we're talking about the expansion of the Orisha, you've also included in these courts some of the lesser known ones, some of the newer ones. Can you explain sort of the rationale of these courts?
Well, I wanted to break that particular book into mainly the main 5 courts, which will be Elegua, Obatala, Yemaya, Ochun, and Chango. And then I'm pretty sure that I added the court of Asohano, and I think that might be it. Let me look in here, but I think that might be it. That's the only other court that I added, was the court of Asohano. Oh, well, I added the court of Ochosi. I had a couple of, and the Inle. So what happened is that there are certain Orishas that have a lot of popularity. Okay, although our main 5 pillars, the main 5 pillars is Elegua, Batala, Ochun, Chango, and Yemaya. And every Orisha will fall, like Inle will fall under Yemaya, but Inle himself has such a large following, and he also has a large court, that's why I gave him his own court in the book and whatnot. But what I'm trying to do is, every entity falls under the ache of one of the other Orishas. You know, they're related to this one, or it's the son of that one, or the whatever, the other one, etc., etc. So they go under that one entity, but each Orisha is individual by themselves also. But what you want to do is it's just a way of keeping the family together. So you know that every Orisha that has to do, let's say, with the ocean, probably falls under the court of Yemaya. So it's easier for you to be like, oh, I see this energy, or I feel this thing. So if I want to really look into it, it will probably be one of these entities under the court of Yemaya that has to do more with maternity, or willpower, or magic and things of that sort.
Yeah, and because you had mentioned that, you know, a lot of the ashe of these Orisha are also very elemental, which kind of brings me back full circle to the very beginning of our live. You know, when we talk about witches and like people of the Neo-Pagan, you know, they're very much into like nature and the pentacle, earth, air, fire, water, spirit. And here we have something that correlates, you know, you can see which ashe of Orisha goes with which element, and there is some pieces that seem familiar and can work in that mindset.
I feel like all religions are the same thing. We're just looking at it in different ways, or different, you know, it's all the same content, but a different context, you know. So Orisha is nature. Every single Orisha is represented in nature somehow. An Orisha is nothing but a rationalized thought form of a ununderstood energy of nature. You know, Orisha is, when you say Ochun, you're thinking about the river, but like we don't really know what the river is, but we're personifying the river as a woman who has these characteristics, and we're associating those characteristics with her. So every Orisha, for example, Igbalaye, who is in Obatala, is associated with the changing of the seasons, and he's the one who causes the changing of the seasons to happen. You have every entity in Orisha wise is represented by something in nature, or it's something that we're trying to pull. It's an energy that we're pulling from nature, and you're putting it into a physical form, which then you're going to take home. So pretty much your Igbodun is nothing more than just a representation. It's an inner representation of the world outside of you, and it's a way for you to connect to the world. So I don't need to go to the ocean to talk to Yemaya when I have Yemaya in my house. So technically, I have the ocean in my house already. However, it is still nice for whenever I do go to the ocean for me to also talk to Yemaya there and connect with her in her more like Irumole manifestation, which is the archetype. And that's the difference too. People don't understand. Orisha is an archetype. The Irumole is the archetype. Okay, so when you say the Irumole, it's when we're talking about the first creative aspect, that which is beyond words and understanding. Like, we don't really understand love, we just feel it and we try to put it into words, but we don't see love, we don't nothing, we just feel it, but we don't understand it at the same time. So we understand Ochun better because she's more human-like and she has been brought down from Irumole essence to Orisha essence, which is easier for our brains to understand. Okay, so like that's the same thing with the Christian Bible and people saying like, oh, the angel this and the angel appeared and it was like a ball or whatever with the wings and the that would be like an Irumole manifestation, let's say. Something that it doesn't even make sense. You cannot even describe it because it's just so weird and it's just so beyond words. But yet, when you look at another angel manifestation, then you see them with like their pretty face and the robe and the wing and this, and they look like a human. So not an angel too, So imagine that big old angel with all the wings and all the eyes then transforming itself down and down and down and down to a way that you can see it and understand it better. That is what Irumole does for us to then have Orisha. And that is where people need to understand that the archetype of the Irumoles and the Orishas are the manifestation of the Irumoles in a more human way so that we can understand it. And then everything in life, in our belief, everything in life is ruled somehow by an Orisha.
Yeah.
So you have
they seem to be they're an element. They are some part of nature. They were there during the creation and therefore have something to do with the creation. They are ancestral. They are, there's so many facets to these spirits, for them to just be, a regular pantheon. And in your book, you do an amazing job to kind of give a nice fat amount of information for each spirit. Like, you introduce the spirit, you tell of one of their patakis, you might possibly put in one of the ceremonies in there, you put in a way to adore them or give adoration either through a meditation or a ceremony or and then you talk about like different ebos and like you said, the adimus. These chapters and the way that you wrote each of these orishas is really, really thorough and really beautifully written. And I'm really looking forward to your second book. Now, your second book, is it already out?
Yes, it is, and it is right here. It's called Ebo LS8, and it's this where you can find it also on Amazon, and it's in English and in Spanish.
Beautiful.
And this book is actually about like actual ebos and ceremonies, whereas I included some ceremonies in that book. That the first book is more like an introduction to like the actual pantheon that I have grown with and entities that I myself worship, and that many people, regardless of any controversy, pseudo, young, older, in between, middle-aged Orisha, regardless of any of those controversies, they're still being worshipped. They're being worshipped. They are being birthed. People are doing offerings and workings on top of them, etc. So I wanted that first book to be an actual introduction to like the pantheon that I have been exposed to, and the pantheon that I worship, and the pantheon that I'm like exalting and that I want to exalt, because what has happened is also that there's not that many books on Orisha that exalt the Orisha. They just give basic information and they call it done and that's it. It's more theoretical, or I don't know, academically based or whatever. Whereas I'm trying to be more like practitioner lifestyle based for people who are interested in it. The second book, I'm giving actual workings for initiates and non-initiates, because it is a personal pet peeve of mine when I have a priest or a priestess tell me that, oh, I never use my Orisha, I never touch my Orisha. They just sit there and I just go to them when I need something, and I find that being very hypocritical. And I always tell people that you have to work your Orishas, you have to touch your Orishas. It's the same thing as having a relationship. You don't just leave your husband off to the side. You have to give him kisses, and you have to touch him, and you have to hug him, and you have to cook for him, and you have to do a lot of more things that is just being like, hey, I need you to fix the light. And that's what happens with people. You need to have your husband and your wife needs to be taken care of, and so does your Orishas. So the second book is teaching people how to actually work with things and work with them and give them a little bit of confidence, because that's another thing that bothers me too, is that a lot of times some people don't want to do something because they think they're going to offend the Orisha. And I was just having a conversation with a lady not too long ago that she said something along the lines of, she's been feeling down and she had the Orishas tucked away for a year and this and that. And I was like, that's fine. We'll just pull them out. Like, how much longer are you going to wait until you rebuild the relationship? So if you took a break for a year, which is perfectly fine, it is better for you to have an Orisha tucked away in a closet than for you to throw it out in the trash. Okay. So if you pull it out after a year, that's perfectly fine. Just restart. Give them an offering, do something, say hello, put them beautiful, light them candles, put them candles, put them flowers, etc., So sometimes people are like afraid to do the basic things, and I just don't understand why that happens. They're afraid to put a candle, they're afraid to touch, they're afraid to insult the Orisha. And I'm like, you're not going to insult them more by not approaching them than by actually going to them and saying like, oh, here's some McDonald's. I'd rather you give them an offering of McDonald's and not give them anything. And I'm obviously being sarcastic. Okay, I'm being sarcastic. I don't want people giving them offerings of McDonald's, but if you should, I'm not going to, I'd rather you do that than not do anything at all, because sometimes people want to do the proper ceremony. And when you are a priest, when you're a legitimate initiated priest or priestess, the proper ceremonies also get lifted. Because again, if you wake up today and you want to put some vanilla ice cream to Obatala, why not? Why not? Vanilla ice cream, and some whipped cream while you're at it too, because why not?
But and that's exactly what these books are meant. They're meant to give you a little bit of that structure there,
to give them a push so that people can feel a little bit more comfortable. And there's other ochas too that people receive, and then they're like, I don't know anything about this ocha besides this and that. And I always tell people that it's a witchcraft teaching. You should never be calling upon something that you don't even know what you're calling about. So if you just read about Isis, the Egyptian goddess, don't be calling on Isis tomorrow. Like, do your research, get to know them, really get to know their history, their stuff. And there was a long time ago, there was a lady that I was told about that was like doing a pagan, a witchy ceremony, calling Yewa into circle while she was naked. And I'm just like, girl, what is she doing? Just because Yewa's color is the color pink does not mean that she's the goddess of love or she's associated with love. And most certainly not for you to do a skyclad ritual for that deity. You get what I'm saying? And so people really need to understand these things. Like, this is not, it's just not, certain things are not appropriate. And certain really need to understand them. So it's the same thing as building a friendship. Once we build a friendship, then we can say jokes to each other. But in the meantime, you have to remain with a certain level of respect as you meet people.
Facts. And so what about people who, are they really love this idea of the Orisha tradition. They love the idea of working with the Orisha as gods and as spirits whom they can call on for their magical workings and all that stuff. Can your books help them with that? Is there clarity in those books with regards to working with the Orisha in that way? I mean, is that even allowed? Like, what would you say to someone who's like, let's say, into witchcraft and wants to work with the Orisha, but doesn't want to go about the path of initiation?
I always tell people that it is okay as long as you remain within your space. Okay, it's what I had said. You can have an altar to Yemaya, but that does not make you a priestess of Yemaya, nor does it make you a daughter of Yemaya, etc., etc. So it is okay for any witch, any pagan, any mystical individual out there that is, so well connected. They can go to the ocean and give offerings to Yemaya and give a prayer to Yemaya, etc., etc. But they cannot turn around. It is not kosher of them to then turn around and charge money, particularly that debate, charge money to someone else and say, oh, I'm going to do a Yemaya ritual on you to like initiate you or give you a representation of Yemaya or something, when they themselves don't have the right to even do stuff with Yemaya. The Orisha is energy. So energy is there for everybody. You can sit in your apartment and you can talk to Yemaya from your apartment, or you can go to the ocean, or you can come to my house and bring her rattles over here. Okay? Yemaya is still going to hear you. Yemaya is going to hear you at every point that you speak to her, but you have to be aware that if you're like Yemaya and you want to work with Yemaya, you then have to learn who Yemaya really, really is. And you have to understand why Yemaya eats ram. And you have to understand why Yemaya eats duck. And why does Yemaya eat whatever else she eats. And the animal sacrifice is a whole interview point by itself.
I was just going to say, I'm like, that's a whole thing, because you got vegan witches, you got witches who don't believe in no.
Yes. And I always tell people, and I think it's super funny because it really does happen a lot of the times, that everybody's a witch until it comes time to do witchy stuff. And I get very frustrated with that too, with people too, because I'm like, I thought you were a witch, but you tell me you never touched a heart in your life. Like, what is happening? What is happening with your magical practice? I don't mock anybody, and I really like, if all you are is about candles, then by all means be,
light a candle. Stephen brought a great example up. He said it's the difference between initiation and devotion or veneration. So like you can have devotion, you can venerate, you can have adoration, you can give honor and love and respect to these spirits, but there's a difference, and then you have another school of thought that's kind of mean about it. They say things like, well, you can talk to the Orisha, but don't expect them to talk to you, or have some discernment, because you want to talk to Orisha, but you might be talking to a trickster spirit, all these different things. But I think overall your message is very sincere. It's very logical, in the sense that the Orisha tradition is expanding. It's happening whether we want it to or not. That is the whole point of these spirits. That is the reason why they've survived. That is the reason why, so the fact that this is happening, and there's someone here that's on the front line that says, this is what I'm observing, this is what I'm seeing happen, whether we agree with it or not, it's happening and it's working. These spirits are alive and well. They may be being birthed directly from Oshun, or they may be whatever, but they're here, and they want to be known. So with that said, my question to you is, do you have any advice to the Western European / Neo-Pagan / Wiccan eclectic witchy community who has an adoration for the ATRs and wants to approach the Orisha, but may or may not have access, or may or may not want to be initiated for maybe some religious trauma that they've gone through or whatever? What is some advice that you can give to them? Where can people reach you? Do you have any nuggets of wisdom you just want to bestow on us about anything, really? The
Yes.
floor is
Okay.
yours for the next 10
Thank
minutes.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So I really want to tell people this. Okay. Orisha, approach it for self-empowerment, not for power. Okay. A lot of people come to witchcraft for power, but you should come for self-empowerment.
Say it.
When you read my third book, you're gonna understand what I mean by my personal description of self-empowerment and power. What I always tell people is that power leads to corruption and self-empowerment leads to true power. Okay. And Orisha should be sought out for self-empowerment. Now, when you come into Orisha, if you do not want to be speaking to a demon, then that's why you need to be doing correct things the correct way, in the traditional way, so that you're speaking to the actual natural force that you came to call upon in the beginning. So the other thing is too, as long as everything is done with respect, even if you don't have someone near you, you may have to network and travel to someone, or someone may have to travel to you, and then you will then proceed with whatever situation or rituals, etc. It is okay for a witch or a Neo-Pagan person to worship the Orisha. It is okay for them to try and build a relationship with the Orisha, and it is okay for them to have a little spiritual altar, as long as they understand that going further means that they have to switch their things. Now, what they really need to understand is that Ocha does not take away, and that's what I want people to understand. Ocha does not take away your practice. Ocha only adds on. Okay, so if you are a Wiccan third degree witch and you want to come into Orisha, you're going to start from the beginning. Okay, however, your practice is still going to remain, and you can do Orisha today, and then tomorrow you do your circle. Or if you're a Jewish person, you can go to the synagogue today, and tomorrow you do your Santeria ritual. Or if you're a Hindu, you do your puja today, and then you do your Santeria stuff tomorrow. Orisha does, or if you're a Muslim, Orisha does not take away. That is what I love about Orisha, is that Orisha is so confident in itself that Orisha always tells you to continue doing that which you were already doing. Okay, so if you are already a hoodoo witch and whatever, you're going to then add Orisha to your hoodoo magic. Orisha is not going to tell you to stop doing hoodoo magic. Or if you're a Santa Muerte devotee, Orisha is not going to tell you to stop praying to Santa Muerte. Orisha, you're going to do Orisha here and Santa Muerte there, but you're still going to do your stuff. And Orisha is going to tell you that if it has been working, you have to continue it. Okay, and what I want people to always understand is that coming into Orisha should be done with personal respect and respect for the tradition, and then done as a way to empower yourself. But again, get to know the entities that you so say you like. If you say you like Chango, you need to know the Chango stuff. You need to know his dance, you need to know his song, you need to know his symbols, you need to know all these things. And Chango does not need for someone to come up with a new symbol, is my point. You can come up with a new symbol in your own practice for your own self, but you cannot go outside and be like, this is Chango's symbol, because that's what happens. And people are going to look at you and be like, that's not what we accept as Chango's symbol. It may be in 20 years from now, but that's what always happens with new things, that people may be a little against it. But if I say that this is Chango's symbol, I can push it into the community easier than if Raven Feather tries to push a new symbol. It's not gonna work out, because Raven Feather does not have, and I'm making that, obviously I'm looking about nobody. I don't want nobody named Raven Feather to come after me later on. I'm just making that up in my head.
Right. There's no need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, if you don't have the backing, it's not going to come out correctly. And at the end of the day, again, it's learn your ABCs before you go into the deeper stuff. Okay. You cannot change something, a religious ritual, when you don't even know what the secret of the religious ritual is. And that is the beauty of Orisha, is the mystery. All Wicca, magic, witchcraft, it's all about mystery. I don't understand why some people want to know everything about Orisha and not get caught up in the mystery. You have to live the mystery. The mystery is what gives it mysticality. It's what gives it power. It's what gives it a shape. So you sitting there, anybody sitting there and reading what a ceremony is and what they're going to do to you, you're just taking out of your own experience. You know,
Right.
It is easier for you to go into initiation without knowing anything. It makes it that much more beautiful, that much more profound than if you already know what steps are coming, or like, oh, they did this wrong or they did that wrong, etc., etc., you know?
Yes,
So
I
I just
totally
want
know.
to tell people that
Ooh, we lost him. Come back. We'll see what happened. Hold on. We'll see what happened. Oh no. Well, in the meantime, while we're waiting for him to come back, I will be linking both of his books in the comments section below so that you can have access to it. The first book, which is the one that I have, it's a pretty thick baby. It's pretty thick. But hold on, let me see what's happening here. Hold on. Okay, so I just got a note. He's just restarting his computer. Okay. So yeah, I'll be linking his books in the comment section. They're pretty thick, but they are such easy and fast reads. Although it's thick, you're gonna get through it very, very quickly. I will tell you that much. All right, here he is. Here he is. Hello.
I apologize. Can you see me now? My computer died, and I was like, oh no.
No,
Anyways.
and look at you. Look, you're much clearer now. You're not skipping.
Am
It was
I?
your computer.
I don't know what's happening. This computer is playing tricks with me. I just want to tell people to be aware, and be witches in particular that follow the witches pyramid, which says to know, to dare, willing to be silent. If you like Orisha, you need to know Orisha. If you like Orisha, you need to dare to practice Orisha. And that too includes the sacrificial parts of Orisha. That doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice, but that means that Orisha has to be consecrated in its correct format. And you have to be able to do all of your things and put your mouth, or put your words where your mouth is, or whatever the saying goes, like walk your talk type of thing. And when it comes to Orisha, Orisha is first and foremost a religion, and then a system of magic. Whereas a lot of people come seeking a witchcraft practice out of a religion. And Orisha is a religion which turns into a lifestyle, which includes magic in it and workings. It's the same thing that you have some people that are Wiccans that are not witches. They may be a Wiccan person that practices nature worship, and they worship the goddess and the god, but they don't care to cast spells. And you may have a witch who is not a Wiccan, just like you may have a Wiccan that may not be a practitioner of witchcraft. But Wicca includes witchcraft. It's the same thing with Orisha. Orisha is a religion. Some people never do any ebos, and some people live their life by doing ebo. And some people never do any initiation, and some people live their life with a lot of godchildren, etc. So it just depends on what you're doing, but just be aware that whatever one is doing and whatever magical practices one is doing, you have to learn your magical practice as best as possible. And when it comes to the topic of Orisha, you're not going to learn Orisha by yourself. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen by reading my books. It's not going to happen by reading other people's books. It's not going to happen by watching my videos or other people's videos. It's going to happen by being in person with an elder. And that's how you really, 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 really learn the religion. It's when you're in person doing the ceremony and like seeing things and chanting things. That's when you really learn Orisha. And Orisha has always been an oral tradition. That's why we have so many little books on Orisha too, because it's always been an oral tradition. So there's even stuff that I cannot write into. I can, but I will not. And there's things that some other people have written down that even I disagree that they have written down. I'm like, that should not have been written down because it's a mystery. And we have to keep people interested in the mysteries.
Exactly. And even with your new book coming out, when we talk about the Ebo, when you talk about the songs, when you talk about the rituals, these are all things that you could, if you were translating it into, witchy language, that's the closest you can kind of think of it in terms of witchcraft, but that's not what it is. It really is its own set. These ceremonies are not witchcraft. They are directions. They're directives being given from the spirit to the practitioners of, this is what you need to do in order to consecrate this. This is what you need to do in order to wake this spirit up. This is what you, but it's not magic. It's, I don't know how best to explain it. It's
it's religion. It's an Ebo and it's religion. And that's what happens. You're gonna do a spell and you're gonna cast you're gonna light a green candle, and I'm gonna do an Ebo for prosperity, and I'm gonna light a green candle. But whereas you might be doing a spell, I might be doing an Ebo, which are two different mentalities. Again, usually the Ebo is done at the feet of the Orisha, meaning that you're doing your magical working and allowing the Orisha to do as they see fit, because they see farther than what we see as humans, versus a spell that you may just want your will to be done no matter what. So even if it hits you in the head later on, you're still like, well, I don't care, I'm going to do it. And there's a difference between witchcraft and religion,
Right.
And so even though both of them may look the same, because in both of them you're lighting a candle, your mentality behind it is definitely completely different. And the actions are also different. And
the presence of those Orishas.
And we hear and do and they'll say like, oh, I'm doing witchcraft and this and use that term interchangeably and that's a funny way, but that witchcraft does have magic in it, does have of the it's just as does that make sense? Hello.
Hi, there you are. I mean, you're cutting out, but your voice is still there.
Okay, I was here. So,
but yes, that made sense.
Yes, people just have to realize that Orisha does have its protocols, and when you get to a certain level, what you think and what you want to do will be allowed. Okay, and that is where I think witches also have an issue, is that people want to run with what they're thinking is because they dreamt it or they feel it deep in the heart and this and that, and then they become impatient. Okay, when your elder gives you the recognition that do as thou will be the whole of the law, then you can go ahead and do as thou will, But in the meantime, it's the same thing as getting permission from your parents. You have to learn, you live by the rules, you do their things, and then eventually they tell you, get your own house, get out of my house, do your thing, do whatever, do whatever you want to do. It's the same thing, because Orisha is a lifestyle, and I want people to always understand that the life, whereas people look at it, when you're looking at Orisha as a religion, it means you're looking at it from the outside. And when you begin to have an Orisha lifestyle, it means that you're actually practicing worshiping and you're inside the Orisha community. So Orisha is not even a religion in itself, it's a lifestyle. And when people start off, when you first start, that happened to me, that happens to everybody. When you first start off, it's your religion. And later on, 23 years later, it's just simply my lifestyle. And I'm just like, I'm not even doing anything religious. People are like, oh, you're doing this and that. And I'm like, oh, I'm just having a Saturday afternoon.
I'm just drinking coffee.
I'm just doing they're just like, oh, you're doing so many rituals and rituals. I'm like, that's just another Saturday. We're just moving on. We got to get all this done. And then
that's it.
After we're done, we're going to go out and have dinner, and call it a day, so people need to understand the difference between the religions. So when you really look at Orisha only as a religion, it means that people are looking at it from the outside versus when you really start to like Orisha and you want to walk with Orisha or integrate Orisha into your life, then Orisha slowly but surely becomes a lifestyle. And it becomes a lifestyle by you learning the lifestyle. You know, you have to practice, you have to do things, you have to learn stuff, you have to meet people, you have to agree, you have to disagree with people, you have to ask questions, you have to ask why. And your elder has to teach you, and you have to expand and then learn, because that's the other thing too, is we are all learning. Being a godparent is the same thing being a parent. If you're 23 and you have a 2-year-old, you're still 23, you know, and you're still learning. So when it comes to Orisha, you may be an Orisha priest, and then now you have a godchild, but you're still learning your own prayers, the songs, the stuff, the whatever you're teaching, what you're learning to someone else. So we're all learning. And as you learn, the other person has the option and the opportunity to interpret what you taught them, you know. And we as godparents also have to be okay with the godchild disagreeing, which is why we're still people. You have to ask the question, why do we do this? Why do we believe that? Why do we put this here? Why do we do that there? Why do we take the person here? Why do we go, you know, why? Because inquisitive minds need to know, and you can learn by being inquisitive. You know,
that's it.
And Orisha one thing only. Orisha has a main thing, that is that Orisha has a lot of very small details that go into the religious ceremonies, that you really get the gist of the religion by the little tiny details. And a lot of times you only get those details when you are there in person.
Exactly. That's part of the mystery.
Learned it, you know, that's part of the mystery.
Yeah, it's true. This time flew by so fast. It was over 15 minutes ago, but I just could not. I wanted to hear more, you know. And so before I let you go, though, how can people reach you? You know, do you have any workshops or any other projects in the work that you want to talk about?
Okay, so people, I do like social media, but I am a little reserved with social media. But people can definitely find me on Facebook through Asiel Baez. People can find me on my YouTube under Asiel Oshun. And people can find me on my Instagram. And if we can put that there, we definitely will later on, but only if we can. But, you know, those 3 social medias, people can find me on for sure. And obviously, if they send me a message, I will gladly give them my phone number, and then they can reach me through the phone also. I always put up my email and all that stuff on my YouTube channel, et cetera, but definitely through there. I feel like I'm always talking to someone, so I definitely do try to be very social with people and answer all the messages that I get. But I just want, you know, always to try and find me through one of those locations: Facebook, Instagram, or my YouTube channel. And whatever way, I will always try and answer back as soon as I can. But I do take a little bit sometimes, so never ever take that personal with anybody. It may take me a day or 2 to answer back to them, but it's fine. Projects coming up is my 3rd book, which is going to be called Iworo Mysticism, Philosophical Teachings of the Lukumi, Volume 1. Because I wanted to add a volume series there, because I must. But that's really going to be really interesting, because I want to go into lifestyle topics. So all sorts of things like pregnant women in the religion, or mental health in the religion, house banishment, spiritual adoptions, possession,
all the fun stuff.
All the fun stuff. You know, why do we believe this? Why do we wear white? What ritual jewelry do we wear? The ritual clothing, like the actual lifestyle, the politics and the law, like literally politics and law. I'm really excited for that chapter, because, you know, I have had the police called on me several times because I've had animals in the house, and the neighbors have, you know, politics and law is a very important chapter that people really need to get into, especially in this country, you know. And I'm breaking down the 3rd book into lifestyle and ethics as one section, and ceremonial knowledge as another section.
Awesome.
To be able to teach people and stuff. So I'm really, really excited for that book.
I'm excited for you. And when you need to come back on the show for that one.
Yes, definitely. I'm going to be super excited. But yeah, I think that book is going to be really good. And anybody who wants to really be into like Orisha and like Orisha and all that stuff, I am always open to answering questions, and I definitely like questions. And the more questions you ask, the more interested I am also in answering them back to you. And again, that's how you're going to learn, is by asking. But just be aware always that when you come, and if you want to be in Orisha, just come with the right mindset that we all start from number one and then we move up the ladder.
That's it. The evolution, baby. The spiritual evolution.
The spiritual ladder, we'll call it.
That's it. So before I let you go, let's give a shout out to a couple of people on the live. You had a nice size audience show up to live. We have Eric, Rob, Saint Jesus, Gio, Michelin, Rose, Angela. Just so many people. A couple people that already came and left. Anna. Oh, geez.
That's my mom.
Hello to all the beautiful people and all the people who are going to be watching on replay. I hope that you enjoyed tonight's live. Asiel, thank you so much for saying yes and for dropping your wisdom tonight. I hope everyone has a wonderful Sunday evening. And most importantly, stay tuned during October. I may not have my live streams, but I will definitely be uploading a lot of cool information from India. So stay tuned for that. Asiel, once again, thank you so much for tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, everyone. Have a wonderful Sunday night. And most importantly, remember, this is how we grow. Good night.